Hello everyone, Twisted Animatronic here. We all know the puppet, right? The mask itself is iconic in FNAF's history. But you see, it didn't always look like this. And what I mean by that is, it didn't always have these tear marks as you can see here from this minigame. No, they came later. But the question is, why? Now I know what you're immediately thinking and what you're gonna say. They came after Charlie possessed the puppet, right? And they came because Charlie was crying when she was murdered by William Afton, right? Well, with that logic, if that was the case, wouldn't all the other victims of William Afton also have crying tear marks on their animatronics after they've possessed him? Because again, they were obviously offed by Purple Guy, and they presumably would have been very upset at that. So with that logic, they would have also had tears transferred onto the masks of their animatronics, right? But no, they haven't, and that is because something different is up with the puppet's mask, the tears, and Charlie. And that's what we're here to uncover today, my friends. The real reason the puppet is actually crying. Because if it was as simple as Charlie was simply crying and that transferred over to the puppet, it's exactly the same as the other victims. They would have been crying and their tears would have also transferred onto their animatronic shells. So there's clearly something different afoot here. Now immediately we have to talk about Charlie's death and the circumstances surrounding that. We know Charlie was locked outside of a pizzeria. Purple Guy comes along in his car, takes the opportunity, attacks and kills Charlotte Emily in a lane where she's left to die. The puppet then comes along outside in the rain, falls on top of her in its search for her, malfunctions, and that's where the two combined into one, and that's how Charlie basically possesses the puppet. And there you go, the basic origin of the puppet summed up for you in 10 seconds. After this possession, the puppet obviously gets the tear marks on his face to signal that it is possessed, very much like Baby with Elizabeth. Baby's eye color changes from blue to green after she kills Elizabeth, signaling Elizabeth has possessed Baby. Further to this though, however, it is also worth pointing out that we see the puppet's mask entangle in Security Breach and Security Breach is ruined, but it doesn't have the tear marks here though. Now the reason for this is that the marks seemingly disappear after the spirit was released, presumably in the fire of FNAF 6, because we know we see the blob in the burned down pizzeria below Security Breach, which is the FNAF 6 pizzeria, hence why we see the puppet's mask without tears, right? But there's actually something huge we're forgetting here as well. You see, when the puppet initially got possessed, the tear marks obviously appeared. Fazbear Entertainment though tried to wash them off, but every time they washed them off, they would always reappear. So what they decided to actually do is rebrand the puppet with the tear marks. That's why you always see the puppet with these tear marks. Initially, it never had them. This is backed up because we actually see an extra puppet mask, well, a spare puppet mask, in FNAF 3, and it has them exact same tear marks. I think that's very important to point out because Tangle, or aka the Blob, could have picked up an old mask which never had the tears, one of the originals before they rebranded. Now, whether she moved on or not is a subject for another video. So we've 100% established that the tears are there as a sign of possession, but the reasoning, however, we haven't deciphered yet. And this is where things start to get extremely interesting. Now, I'm all pretty sure that you've all experienced tears in your lifetime. It comes on as a form of extreme emotional trauma and damage. Or when you can't get your chicken nuggets out the oven because they're so hot. Or like when you see Goku turn Super Saiyan for the first time. Oh, that brings tears to the eye. So what I'm saying is, it's clearly brought on by some type of huge emotional work. That gives us our first hint to the reasons why these tears are actually on the mask. But pinpointing exactly what piece of trauma has brought on these tears to manifest on the puppet in this way is going to be a lot more difficult. Especially when you get into the dilemma of, was Charlotte killed first or last? Because that completely changes the dynamic of these tears. Because the puppet's role in FNAF has always been quite strange in itself. I mean, you've only got to look at Give Gifts, Give Life, where we literally see the puppet putting on the animatronics' heads on top of the children. But the main burning question here in all of this so far is, did Charlie die before or after the MCI? Now, there's a whole argument to say that Charlie died after the events of the MCI, meaning she came after all the other children were killed. And the reason people believe this is because of the grave order in Help Wanted 2. She's basically last. If that was the case, then she could have potentially have seen all the deaths as a child, and the reason why she has tears on the mask is because she's reliving these moments and it transfers onto the front of her mask. She's clearly traumatized by it. But no, I don't believe that to be the case because I don't think she actually comes after all the MCI victims. I believe she comes before. before? And there's a simple answer which explains all of this and the reason for it. Isn't it, Freddy?
Yes, there is, Twisted Animatronic.
Henry literally implies she was the first. He literally says there was a wound first inflicted on me.
And heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
Now, you could say that you could interpret that in a different way because he doesn't specifically say his daughter, but there is no other indication he's referencing any other event in his life. The only wound Henry has, which we know about, was the wound of him losing his daughter, hence why it's reasonable to think he's referring to that. Not to mention, you obviously have Garrett, who's likely the parallel of Charlotte, who also dies first. We also know in the novels that Charlotte again dies first, giving us all the hints, information, and everything we need to basically say, yeah, she died first. The gravestone Odin Help Wanted 2 just isn't enough to convince me or show me there's enough evidence to suggest that she died last. With that out of the way, it's going to help solve the events which lead to the tears and the reasoning why there's tears on the mask and not on any other animatronic. Now, with the knowledge that Charlie died first, it's safe to say that obviously being a puppet and being inside Freddy's, she would have seen the victims potentially lose their lives, or at least we know she would have seen the victims stuffed in the suits. So not only did she obviously witness her own death, she's witnessing several others, giving her more emotional trauma than any other spirit and animatronic combined. So immediately you'd think that's the reason for the tears. She's extremely upset that she was not able to do anything about the murders, the kids, and able to stop William Afton. So she tries in her own way to help them by giving them gifts, giving them life. Basically showing the souls where their bodies were stuffed in these animatronics and then bringing them to life. Give gifts, give life. That's her way of helping and relieving her pain, right? But no, that isn't the reason. That doesn't make sense because she actually gets the tears when first possessing the puppet. Meaning it was before she possesses the puppet. Something happened before then. And then it actually hit me and I realized there are two specific minigames which show the events of Purple Guy attacking Charlotte Emily, right? Obviously where it takes place in the lane. We have the security puppet minigame from FNAF 6 and the Take Cake to Children minigame, which is from FNAF 2. Now, interestingly, these two minigames both show the events of Charlie's murder, even though they're several games apart. Well, 4 games apart. Now, in the Take Cake to the Children minigame, that's a tongue twister in itself, you basically play as Freddy and you've got to deliver cake to 6 kids, where you see Purple Guy standing outside attacking an individual, which we know is Charlotte Emily. What is interesting in this though, and this is where I believe the one and only retcon in FNAF history comes in, is where there's letters being called out which basically spell save him. Now, obviously, him is referencing the person outside, but we know the him is a her, and that is where I believe the retcon in FNAF comes into play. Either that or the save him is referring to a different child, which doesn't really make sense. Now, interestingly enough, that minigame from FNAF 2 is paired with another minigame 4 games later in FNAF 6, and that's the security puppet minigame. In this minigame, you play as the security puppet and you have to find you a designated individual and stop them from leaving the pizzaplex while making sure you don't run into any other children. After playing the minigame several times, you will spawn in and notice that the child you're supposed to be looking after is outside of the building, and you can't help because a box has literally been placed on the top of you, a box trapping you inside. Obviously, we know what happens. William Afton turns up, the kid starts to disappear, and the box which was on top of you, a box, is now gone, and you're able to freely move again. But by this point, it's too late. The puppet then goes outside, but is slowly getting damaged by the rain. But at this point, the puppet doesn't care. It keeps going and going in the rain, knowing that it's not going to make it back. The puppet now is severely damaged by the rain and starts to crawl next to the child's dead body, deactivating and falling limp next to the corpse. Because you see, its mission directive was to look after and then save Charlotte Emily, but it clearly failed, eventually falling limp and lifeless just like the body lying next to it. And the rest is history. Charlotte obviously possesses the puppet. And this is the only situation in FNAF history where this happens. The animatronic is actually coming to save one of the children prior to being haunted, possessed, whatever you call it. It's the only instance in FNAF history. Unless you count Roxanne Wolf coming to Cassie's aid at the end of Ruin when she versus the Mimic, but that's a different story entirely, and I've done a theory on that and a spirit inside of her. You see, the puppet was always assigned to protect Charlie. They had this special connection. And obviously with it being an AI, some of that AI programming transfers into its haunted state. Look at the other animatronics, and I've done a whole video on how some of the AI programming actually affects the haunting of the animatronics and the spirits themselves. In this case, the soul obviously gets infused with the puppet's AI creates these tears, and the tears come from the inability of the puppet being able to save Charlie. It was extremely saddened that it couldn't be there to protect Charlie from William Afton. This then explains why no other animatronic has these tears, because no other animatronic was programmed to look after a child or protect them. The other spirits just simply possessed the animatronics and their AI. The puppet, however, and Charlie, their relationship was very different. Coupled with the trauma already she experienced from obviously being in that alley alone, locked outside of the pizzaplex, all of it combined together created the tears on the actual mask. And the fact that they're purple just further signifies purple guy is the root cause of all the trauma for the animatronic and for Charlie herself. However, there could be another reason, and that's if she died after the victims of the MCI. And if that was the case, then there's a whole box of theories we could explore. She's seen the victims before they died, she's seen William Afton carry out his horrific acts, but the evidence of the game suggests that isn't the case. And anyway, that's just a theory. So, what do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I read every single comment. And I also have another question for you. Why did the animatronics always return to the stage? If you want to know the answer, check out this video right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Hit subscribe right now to keep up to date with all the FNAF theories I'm producing and coming out. You're not going to want to miss any of these coming up. Massive thanks to my members who are on screen now, and a special thanks to William Plays 844 and Lauren C, who's golden twisted ones, and Penguin Lover 12, who's actually a twisted animatronic and an ultimate theorist. And a big welcome to Nightmare Shadow Fredby. I'm Twisted Animatronic, that's a twisted theory, and stay safe out there, superstars.